So in this particular session, we are going to see how we can build an application where we are going to have ASP.NET MVC web application hosted as app service web app. The web application is going to make use of the SQL Server database. The web application is going to make use of the storage account for storing files. And thus, then of course, for the web application, the app service web app, we are going to have a web job. The web job will be responsible for communicating with, again, the storage account as well as the database. So basically a typical application which is very suitable for the cloud architecture, how well we can utilize all the resources, all the services which are available in cloud. So I'm going to do this step by step. Let's begin with creating a new project first. So we'll take a C# ASP.NET web application and let's call it as employee management web app. Click on OK. Change authentication. We don't want authentication. And click on OK. This is going to create a basic application. In the meantime, let's create a new application here. New web app. I'll prefer giving the same name if possible, provided it's available actually. Employee management web app. We'll use an existing resource group, the plan, and create. So it will take a while. In the meantime, I go back to Studio, and in Studio we are going to have actually 3 projects in a solution. One is the web application, the primary application which we want to have the user interface, the one with which the users are going to interact. Then I'm going to add to this solution a new project which is, let us say, a class library project. And through this class library, we would like to share the classes between web jobs and the primary web application. So common class library, any name you can give which is relevant actually to the context. And then I'm going to have additionally a new project created in which I would like to use a simple console based application, basically a web job. The web job is going to work with thumbnail web job. So let me explain now. The whole process is like this. From the browser, the request is going to be sent to server, which is our web app. Now web app is going to put data in SQL Server plus the storage. Now in storage we are going to create a blob where the file is going to be saved, and I'm also going to make use of the table storage where I'm going to save not table, let's say the queue, where I'm going to put a message, and then we will have the web job which is going to take the data from the queue and again write it back to the storage. So web application will take input from browser and give it to SQL Server and storage account wherein files will be saved in blob and messages will be posted to queue. Web job is going to read the data from the queue. This is the whole action. Now here I'm going to have a SQL Server employee table. That means I want to manage employee data, add, edit, delete employee data. Now for every employee we are going to capture an image, and that image file I'll store it in blob, and the name of the blob, rather the path of the blob, I'm going to store it in the SQL Server table. At the same time, for every image we would also like to have a thumbnail, the smaller image, and that thumbnail should be constructed using web jobs. That is precisely the task. We don't want the primary application to have logic required for creating a thumbnail from the primary image, because that is going to take some time and we don't want that delay to be added to the response from the browser. So this should do the primary job and return back to the client, and the secondary job we would like to perform through web job in background. So this is the kind of architecture right now we are trying to develop in our web-based application. Of course, in between, the SQL Server and the storage account are the ones which will store the data. So let us now create one by one the storage account and the SQL Server database. So go to SQL Server, create a new SQL Server database, SQL database. Let's call it as EMP demo DB. Use existing resource group server. I'll call it as DSS EMP server, DSS admin, some password for connecting to SQL Server. Click on select. Elastic pool, no. Pricing tier, whatever default is good enough. Actually basic is also good enough for demo purpose. Why unnecessary invest more? And click on create. So it is going to create a SQL server, the logical server, and under that it is going to create database. Of course, it's going to take some time. In the meantime, I'll go here and create a storage account. Add. Let's call it as DSS EMP storage. Rest all I'll leave it as default and click on create. So database is getting created. Something went wrong. DSS EMP storage is already taken. Storage account. Yep, storage account created. Verify that the database is also created. Still taking time. Anyways, I go back here and now I prepared this project for connecting to storage account as well as SQL database. But for working with SQL, we would want to use a NuGet package entity framework. And I would like to use entity framework in all the three projects. I have right clicked on the solution so that the reference to entity framework can be added in all the three projects. Likewise, I would add the reference to web jobs the class library for web jobs. Actually, we don't need web jobs in class library project. Just adding it. Likewise, I'll add the reference to storage account. Storage account. Windows Azure storage. I don't want it in class library. So all the references added. The class library reference should be added in both the projects. Here also. So class library is referring to, rather class library is being referred in web application as well as the web job, both. Just build it once. We are going to use code first approach. Now in code first approach, we will build the entity class along with the context. So that I'm going to place it here. Rather, to avoid, I'm just deleting the namespace also. And my entity class here is employee and the context. And there is one more class, blob information. I'll explain you the purpose of it. I need that. So 3 classes we have here. All using statements on top. Entity. So employee class is mapping to employee table. From this employee class, employee table is going to be created. Code first approach. Wherein employee ID is going to become the primary key. Employee name, salary, we are restricting the string length. Actually, that is for next one. Image URL and thumbnail URL. Image URL is going to have the URL for the primary image, and thumbnail URL is going to have the URL for the thumbnail image. Of course, these images I'm going to store in blob so that multiple instances of my web application can have access to the same data. Context is for managing the employees DB set, and then blob information is here, where we are going to have a blob URI and blob name. Now, why do we need this blob URI and blob name? This is needed for communication between the primary web application and web job. The web application is going to create a new record here. The web application is going to create a new record in the employee table, and along with the employee ID, a message is going to be posted into the queue. So that employee ID we are going to get from here. Employee ID is there, but to construct, what is WebJob supposed to do? WebJob is supposed to create a thumbnail image. For that, it needs a primary image. So for that, it will need the blob URL of the primary image, the main file. That also it is going to get from here. And just a name without extension. so that it can be saved. So we'll of course use this in WebJob later. Let's keep it as it is. Now go to the main web application. We already have some home controller. We are not interested in it, so we can delete that home controller and the corresponding views also. Instead, we would like to have employees controller. So I'll add now a new controller. I'll call it as employees. We want, of course, a controller which is going to have view which are generated using entity framework. So employees controller, data context class, you can choose actually employee, and rest we can keep it as it is. Something went wrong. Just it's asking us to rebuild it. It's okay. The scaffolding template is going to generate the controller class as well as all the required views for that particular controller class. So when I execute this program for the first time, automatically the employee table is going to get created. But where? That information we will have to add in the connection string. And connection string is in web.config. So in web.config, I'll add a section connection strings. Under that we would like to add some name for the connection string, and of course we'll have to provide a type which is system.data.sql client. Now what should be the connection string? For purpose of demo, I'm going to create a local database for the time being. Later we are going to switch to the SQL database service which we created in Azure. So SQL Express, user ID, no, I'm going to use integrated security is equal to true, and database is equal to some name we would give. Let's say emp demo or emp demo db, something, emp details demo db. Of course, you don't even have to create this database in local SQL server because entity framework is going to automatically create one for you as we are using the code first programming model. And some name. Now this name compulsory must be same as the name which we have given for the context. If not, we'll have to pass that name to the parent class constructor. So I'll prefer using the same name here. My demo context. Save it, build it. All good. You can actually run, press Ctrl F5 and execute. So by default it will try to go to home controller which we actually deleted. So what I can do is go to app start, route config, and default controller itself we will change it to employees controller. So you don't have to type the URL every time as /employees. Now refresh once again. It will take little while now because it is going to create the database in the background because it is being executed for the first time. and it's here. Try to create a new row, but problem is it is asking for thumbnail and full size image path. I don't want to give path. Instead, I would like to give actually a file which we want to upload. So we have to make a change to the create. Go to view. In view we have create.cshtml, and here last two we have got image URL and thumbnail URL. These two we would like to replace. So I'll delete these two, last two, and instead I would like to get from the handout a form group where I would like to capture file upload. But once we have file upload here, it is important that we change from begin form. We have to now make a change to this begin form. Let's see first. Control F5. We got the image file now. That's the image of the employee. Now just look at the source, and here very important attribute ENC type is missing. Action is there, method is there, but because we have got a file upload control, we are supposed to provide ENC type is equal to form multipart slash form hyphen data. So I'm taking this part now from the handout, and I'll replace this line with that. An extra attribute is needed, ENC type multipart slash form hyphen data. Rest is all fine. Because we wanted to provide this parameter, we had to give these parameters also. So we are now going to submit the form to create action method of employees controller using HTTP post with an additional attribute, that is multipart slash form hyphen data. Press again Control F5. Now let us look at the source once again, and this time we will have that extra attribute, and that's very, very important for file upload control to work. Rest is all okay. We don't need to touch anything. Similarly, of course, we have to make a change to edit also. I'm leaving it. I'm not doing that. Now we'll go back to browser. Let us also add an employee, and we'll see that the employee is added into the table in local database. And where is local database? We should have it here. Add a connection. Something wrong. We'll use Management Studio. In the meantime, let us add a new employee. E1, salary, some name, create. You see, this is there, but we don't have image saved, thumbnail saved. Yes, we haven't done anything for storage account. I would like to store the image in the blob, storage account blob, and I have not written any code for it. Neither Studio has generated anything for it. But I would like to show you here that the table is created, database is created, row is also added, That's the database. Table is created. All this has happened on the fly. Execute the query and you see here, these two are null. So we'll keep it here. Go back. Now we add the relevant code required for creating a new controller. Yeah. We would like to now write the code, let's say in create. That is here. Now what should be the code? The code should be to create a blob along with posting a record into the employee table. We would like to have a blob now. So these two things are not coming from the browser. Image URL and thumbnail URL, you can remove this. Instead what we are getting is, go and check up what did we give the name in create.cshtml, image file. So here we can add image file. So those are inputs. Now I'm going to take some code from the handout and I'll explain it. A new function I'm adding now for storage account. Resolve all the namespace related problems first. So upload and save blob and post message to queue. Upload and save blob. What the image we want to save, that image is here. And also we want to post a message to the queue. So for this, from the configuration manager connection string, we want the storage account reference, the connection string for storage account. So here what we have to do now is in web.config, we'll have to add the connection string for storage account and the name should be same, AzureWebJobs storage. And what should be the connection string? We'll take it from the portal. Go back to the storage account, the new storage account which we created, WebJobs storage. Oh, by mistake I created classic, doesn't make a difference, but we should not have created classic storage. Oh, sorry, I think this is what is, okay. That's the old one, ignore that. DSS EMP storage account, this is the latest one. It's not classic. So this access key, and from here we are going to get the connection string. Copy the connection string, either primary or secondary, any one is okay. Paste it here. We should also have one more for logging, that is dashboard. Storage Azure Web Jobs dashboard. Two connection strings we want. Back here. So we got the storage account reference, and using the storage account we would like to create a blob client which we want to store it in a blob container. So here we have a container, images. Now some code is missing, I'll add here, images blob container dot create if not exist. If the blob container is not there, we would like to create it. And the blob name is a GUID. We are dynamically framing a GUID and appending the extension of the file uploaded. So the name of the file which is uploaded is not so important, extension is important. So from the file path which is uploaded, we are first getting the extension, and that extension we are appending it to the GUID. That becomes the new blob name. And we are getting the blob reference here, images blob container dot get blob reference. It's a blob because it's a file, and that blob we are getting the input stream into which we are saving the content of the file upload, which is Centium. Image file dot input stream. So upload from stream. So from this file, content is uploaded into image blob, and we are closing the stream. So what is this doing? The image which is uploaded, it is storing in a blob. By this name. And this name now we have to save it in the database. So for that, I am returning the image blob.uri. But what is image blob.uri? Okay. So this is only the name, but we want complete path. Complete path right from http:// the storage account name dot slash and so on. Like that we want complete path. So here we are going to get that complete path. I mean, this is the blob, actually blob reference, and from blob reference we are returning the URI. But at the same time, I would like to store a message in the queue which is going to be retrieved by Azure, the storage queue. So here we are getting the reference to the storage client for queue, getting a queue storage. The queue may not exist, so I should create the queue. If not existing, first time it has to be created. Once the queue is created, I'm now creating a blob information object in which I'm going to put employee ID and blob URI, image blob.uri. This message, I'm adding it to the queue in JSON format. So pretty straightforward code. First, we are trying to upload an image into the blob where we are creating a container if not existing. 2, we are adding a message of type blob information into a queue. Again, queue is being created if not existing. And the URI of the image we are returning back to create. What is the purpose of it? Here we will need that actually. See, here we are adding an employee. So when we add an employee ID will be provided in backend. And as we have already seen, we do not have image URL. So for this employee ID which is provided in backend, I should update image URL now. So for that, some basic code we have to do. After save changes, this is extra part which we'll have to add now here. So we are just checking image file. Now what is image file? Rather, this we can delete, and we will add one extra parameter now. HTTP posted file base, and that is image file which is uploaded. So in employee object, we are only going to get ID, name, salary, and the extra file image which is uploaded we will get here. So if that is not null, that means if the image is provided and if it is not empty, then employee object which is created, for that we are giving image URL, the primary, which is the URL returned by the function which we wrote just now, to which we are passing the image uploaded as well as the employee object, and again save it back into the database. So now again time to test the application. So this time I am going to create an employee, upload an image. After creating an employee and uploading an image, we should see that let's do it. E2, some 20,000, some image. Hopefully everything goes fine. Yes, and you see we got full size image, but we don't have thumbnail image, and you can actually verify in database also. We have the image URL now. Now what is this image URL? This is the image URL of the blob which is created. Where is the blob? You can actually see that blob in Studio itself. Expand Azure, storage account, and we'll have to add the connection. Account name, DSS EMP storage, account key I'll take from here, and OK. Expand this, check if there is a blob item added here. Yes. What is also important is in queue we should have blob information under this thumbnail request, because we haven't written the web job. It is not processed yet. So now it's time to write the web job. Once we test the whole application locally, then only we are going to upload it. So first we are doing everything on the local machine. So now I go back to the project, the web jobs project this time, and start editing code here. Now what we should do here, pretty simple. I want this web job to be hosted as a continuous process. Now when it has to be hosted as continuous, it should keep querying. So now I'll take the basic job host, and then we should write a public class, something like functions. I've added all the required references earlier itself. Right, make this also as public, and we should add a class function which is responsible for processing a function which is executing when a message is posted here. So we want one callback function kind of thing here. So a lot of code which I'm not really interested in explaining, but I'll copy from handout and just quickly go through it. Stream IO, bitmap is in graphics using system.drawing. Drawing 2D, imaging. So here, first let me quickly go through this. Convert image to thumbnail JPG. So here we are getting in input the primary image, and in output we are going to create a thumbnail image. And this is the code which you can find anywhere on internet. To convert an image, we first create a bitmap object, find out whether width is greater or height is greater, and accordingly the new image width and height will be decided. And then we have got all the required code for creating a thumbnail. Let us not dig into it. We are not even interested. You can find out and understand yourself later. Now, when should this be done? When a new message arrives in thumbnail request queue. That is when the trigger should happen. So that's the first parameter. But as a result, what is the requirement? We want to read the blob of the primary, and we want to create the output blob. So here we have output blob.openWrite. We got the stream actually, into which we are storing the stream. That's it. So output blob stream, And very important, the name is based on this template, and compulsory we are creating the thumbnail in JPG format only. So for both blob name and the blob name without extension, we have used GUID. Blob name actually contains the primary image with extension, and this is the secondary, that is the thumbnail image with fixed. This might be JPG, this might be PNG, this might be BMP, but here we are fixing it as JPG. But eventually what is important is the new file path, the blob type path, we have to save it in the table here. So for that we need to perform database operation. So we already have the employee ID, where in blob URI we have the blob information object. We'll have the employee ID. So from blob information we are getting the employee ID. From there we are getting the employee reference. We are updating the employee, this time with the URI of the thumbnail image, and saving it back. So yes, web job is first converting an image from the main image to the thumbnail image, and the same image is saved in the database. So this action otherwise we should have performed in the main primary web application. Instead we are now doing it in the web job. What is the advantage? The primary main application doesn't have to wait until this task is completed, and even without waiting it will simply return back to the client. So client is going to get a better output, better performance. So now it's time to run the web application. Here we have already executed the web application. Actually time to now run this web job to see if this is getting created or not. But for web job to execute, it needs connection string. So I'll go to app.config, and in app.config I'll take the same connection strings which we have in web application. So copy this, into app.config. Save it. Same connection strings for database as well as for web jobs. The storage account and so on. Now make this as the startup project. Control F5 for execution. Wait for it to perform the action. We have only one. So this function got executed. Right now it is executing. It is taking some time. And the function is succeeded. Now go back to database. Again execute, and you see the URL is there. And this is the thumbnail URL. Thumbnail. And this is the primary URL. Thumbnail is missing. Now are these URLs accessible? Let's copy and paste in the browser. We should get an error. Why? Because by default for the container, blob container, images which I have created, images, the access policy is private. I'll change that to blob. Save it. So again come back after you save it, come back and refresh. You should get the image. Some image, don't worry about what it is. But what is important is a smaller part of this is of course somebody's thumb impression. But you'll see that now thumbnail is a small image. I'll open a new window. It's a small image. So this is the main image, bigger in size, and the small image, smaller in size. So like this we have two images now. Next is time to now host. So basically it's all working, and of course in browser also, if you refresh, you should get the thumbnail image. Oh, something went wrong. Could not load the assembly storage or one of its let's close and run fresh. Make the web application as the startup and run. I think that was a temporary error. And it's it. Of course, this can be replaced with the image tag to show the image. Instead of specifying the text, you can always change that to an image tag. So you can now go to something like index controller, sorry, employees controller index.cshtml, and here you can put img src as this value. That's it. Save it and refresh. Here we should get the thumbnail image. So where is thumbnail image coming from? Obviously the thumbnail image is coming from the storage account. The path is coming from the database table. So the whole program, the project, everything is functioning perfectly on my local machine. So it's now time to publish this into Azure. So we have already created the web application in the beginning. We'll publish it in the same web application. So right click, publish. First we'll publish the primary web application. You have to connect to your account. Choose the right web app. Very important is the connection string. Azure Web Jobs, we don't do anything. Here we have to provide the connection string. Now this connection string should refer to the one which is on server. So how do we get that? Now what I'll do is, okay, ideally click here and from here we can take it. What is the server name? Go back to portal, go to the database. Now we want to connect to this database from our local machine. So first we are going to set the firewall. Save it. Then I'll take the connection string. So here I have the server name. I gave username DSS admin and I gave some password. Test the connection first. Of course, you can give the database name also. EMP demo DB. Test it. It should function. Firewall also is allowed. So it's all perfect. Now click on OK. Connection string is created. You can actually copy this and put it somewhere in Notepad. Next, publish. Now we'll have to wait for a while for this application to get published. After publishing the web application, we will have to publish the web jobs. All the files are getting uploaded. And it's done. And you'll see that automatically the URL is opened here. If we are able to connect to the database successfully, we should get the basic screen, because the basic screen index.cshtml itself is trying to fetch data from the employee table. Of course, that will be empty. It will not have any records. Yes. So now if I create an employee, web job is not published yet. Let me remind you. Employee name, let's say E1, some salary, some file we upload. Again, thumbnail is not there because there is no web job. Even if I refresh this page after some time, I'm not going to get the thumbnail. Now what is important is, see, when I was running my application locally, this was run as a simple console based application. It was actually not run as a web job. I had to manually execute it. But in case of the live environment, it has to simply execute as a web job in background. So it is supposed to use the connection string, and that it gets it from the app config. But by chance, if you do not have any connection string here, it is very important that you should know it is automatically going to take from the app settings of the web application. So here we have got application settings, right? For the web application, for our web application, the app settings which we provide are going to be also used by web jobs. Very, very, very important. Application settings. So I do not have anything here. That is the reason I have written explicitly over here. So right now we have these settings actually in both web application as well as web job. So ideally speaking, we can simply put it once here so that it becomes available to both the applications, web application as well as the web job application. So just add the connection string and the value. So if you change at one place, it will automatically reflect in both the places. And we have learned earlier that when we overwrite here, that's the latest value which is going to be used by the web application, even though it will be there in the web config. The value provided in the settings environment is going to make use of these values first. Only when it is not there, then it is going to take from web config. 2, because this is a web job which has to execute continuously in background, one very important property we have to set, that is always on. Indicates that your web application needs to be loaded at all times. By default, web apps are unloaded after they have been idle. It is recommended that you enable this option when you have a continuous web jobs running on a web app. This is very important. If you do not enable this option, after some time when the application is idle, the web application will terminate, and when the web application will terminate, automatically the web jobs will stop executing. So turning this to on is also very, very important, especially for continuous web jobs. If they are scheduled and executed on demand, then it's a different story. But otherwise you have to ensure that always on is done here. So now it's time to publish a web job. So right click here and publish as Azure Web Job. Run continuously, which is the good option for us. We'll select the existing web application under which it has to be published, and connection. Here we'll not have anything like connection string. Remember that. It's only from the config file we have to take, or the connection string will be taken from the environmental settings of the web application under which this web job is hosted. Publish. So build is succeeded. Now it is going to publish the web application. There is something wrong here. My demo context web config connection string argument cannot be null. Actually, you can just do a clean and rebuild it. I mean, republish it, it should go away. After doing a cleanup, if you republish, it should go away. If it doesn't go, then we'll have to do something else. The problem is it's not identifying the entity framework class and this, my context and this. My context is actually in a DLL file, and this is there in the app config here. So that connection is what is important. So it is rebuilding it. All the DLLs, everything. I think before it completed the build I started last time. Let's republish once again. Published successfully without errors, without warning. Now go back to the web application. Actually, you can also see from portal, go to web jobs, filter it. We should have the web job here. Yes, and it's running. Let's look at the logs. It's a continuous process. Click on it. Toggle output. Jobs directory. Okay, that is fine. We overwritten anyhow. Found the following function. Job has started. Right. Now let's add a new employee. One. So E2, let us call it. Some salary. Some image. And we have to wait for a while. so that in background the task is completed, and we should have the thumbnail here. So we can see if refresh it here. Executing function. Now go back to browser, refresh. We should get the thumbnail image. It's not showing up. Let's first verify in the database if the image is successfully created. So for this I have to connect first to the Azure database. As it is connecting, just make one more attempt. It should come actually. Not sure what could have gone wrong. Thumbnail URL is not appended. Oh, I think this is the problem. You see, in WebJobs app.config, database connection string I have given is local SQL database. This is a mistake I have done. This I should have changed it. So that is the reason. Ideally, yes, we should do this only. We'll take this value and in the web application app settings will provide. Will provide the connection string. This is what is very important step. I repeat once again, the error is when I published my web job, the connection string is referring to local SQL database. Hence the database which was created in Azure, SQL Azure, is not getting updated. So we want both of them to make use of the SQL Azure database. Hence in one place I made the change, that is in applications app settings. Now let us try to add a new row, or we'll go to the web jobs, select it, stop, and we'll restart it. We'll stop and start because the connection string has been changed. Or else you republish. Republishing is not required because we haven't made any changes to the code. taking time. Yes, it's stopped and start. Refresh. We should have status running. Perfect. Now go back to, and actually even without we doing anything, no, there are no messages in the queue. So let's put a new one now. Verify in database. First, verify if the web job is executed. For that, go to logs. The dashboard of the web job will open. Toggle output. Yes, the message has been posted and executed. Go back. Refresh. Yes, we got the thumbnail image. And we can verify in database also we have the thumbnail image. Perfect. So this is how a end-to-end application has been developed where we are able to perform partial operations in this, the primary web application, and partially we are able to perform through a web job. And in between we are sensibly using the SQL Server and storage account. In storage account again, we are making use of the blob storage and the queue storage.